Welcome. It is Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz. Ben Ferguson with you as well. Senator, we've got a big election night in America, and the socialist, Marxist, communists in New York, they're celebrating right now as we're recording.
Well, it is election night in America, and we've got disparate results. We have, number one, socialists and left-wing radicals winning in New York. And we have, number two, in South Carolina, strong conservatives winning in South Carolina. We're going to break those down and what that means, what's happening in elections right now. We're also going to talk to you about a shocking and disturbing decision from a radical left-wing judge appointed by Joe Biden, who just struck down the Trump administration's using a federal database to stop illegal aliens from voting in federal elections. This is a ridiculous decision. We're going to give you the facts behind it.
Also, want to talk to you real quick about the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews and the work that's being done right now to help so many in need still in Israel. From America's Revolutionary War to Israel's fight for survival in 1948, both nations have faced moments that tested their courage, yet freedom endured. In October of 1985, President Ronald Reagan delivered these remarks about America's commitment to stand with Israel.
In our talks, we paid special attention to two issues: our commitment to Israel's security and well-being, and our shared desire to move forward together toward a just and lasting peace between Israel and all its Arab neighbors. A strong, secure Israel is a shared interest.
As America celebrates its 250th anniversary, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews reflects on the friendship between the United States and Israel, two democracies built on faith, liberty, and hope. Sign up to receive a free USA Israel flag pin when you go online to flagpinifcj.org. That's flagpinifcj.org. So it is a very weird election day. I love election days. You're heavily involved in the one that's happening right now. You got into some races. We're going to talk about those in a second. But I want to talk about the takeaway of what we're witnessing in New York City. Mandani went out there, endorsed some people, and he got all them elected. He's very excited about this. This is full communism and socialism combined with some Marxism. It is flourishing in New York. What is your takeaway from this? It is really shocking to see how quick America, one of America's greatest cities, is going to fall.
Look, it is tragic, but the Democrat Party has lost its ever-loving mind. In the age of Trump, they hate Trump so much. You know, there used to be moderate Democrats. There used to be Democrats who could see reason, who could find common ground. Today's election is the latest illustration that the base of the Democrat Party is radical, it is socialist, it is Marxist, it is extreme. And so we had today three primary victories for the socialists. This is not me calling them socialists. They call themselves socialists. So you had number one, and all of these were pushed by Comrade Mandami.
Yeah.
Number one, Brad Lander, who was the city's comptroller, defeated incumbent Representative Dan Goldman. Now, look, Dan Goldman was a left-wing Democrat, but he was not totally insane.
Yeah. It
turns out Democrat primary voters want totally insane, and so they just threw him out of office. Beyond that, Daria Liza Avila Chevalier bested Representative Adriano Espilat in the 13th district, which is Upper Manhattan and parts of the Bronx. So again, an incumbent beaten by an open socialist Marxist lunatics. And then the third Mandami endorsed candidate, Claire Valdez, won the primary for an open house seat representing the 7th district, which includes neighborhoods in Brooklyn and Queens. And the incumbent, Nydia Velasquez, is currently represents the district, is not seeking re-election. And the Democrat Socialists of America backed Chevalier and Valdez. Now, this is the reality of where the Democrat Party is. And understand, this is not just New York, although New York is ground zero for this. You want to know who represents the heart of the Democrat Party today? It is Mandami, it is Bernie Sanders, it is AOC, it is Ilhan Omar. And the results tonight, with three socialist victories in the Democrat primaries in New York, is every Democrat in Congress, they're already terrified of the radical left. They will now be more terrified of the radical left. And I'm going to repeat a prediction that I made several months ago in this podcast. I believe in 2028, the top two Democrat front runners for president are Gavin Newsom and AOC. I believe AOC will run for president, and she will be a top-tier candidate because that's where the base of the party is. By the way, the charter member of the AOC for President Committee will be Chuck Schumer, who is utterly terrified that AOC will primary him and beat him in a Democrat primary. But here's my second prediction, which I've made before, but I want to repeat. AOC will run for president, and Mondami is going to run against Chuck Schumer for the Senate, and Mondami will beat Chuck Schumer for the Senate. Both of those predictions,
I like this
I think you can take them to the bank.
I like this prediction. By the way, you go back to how radical the Democrats are, especially in New York City.
Let me stop and say one of the things about this podcast.
Yes,
You're usually
right. Yeah, your predictions are pretty good.
I make lots of predictions, and I make bold, aggressive. I don't know anyone. There are some people saying AOC is going to run for president. I have not heard anyone say Mondami is going to run for Senate and beat Schumer. I believe that's right. To be clear, on this podcast, we predicted a year before Joe Biden dropped out of the race that Joe Biden was going to drop out of the race. We predicted that. We also, in the height of COVID, we laid out the facts that COVID escaped from a Chinese lab and likely was manufactured in a Chinese lab at the time that was being suppressed all over the place. So I will say we don't get every prediction right, but look, you take no risks and you get no reward. I don't know that that's right, but
See, this is why when people ask me, why does Senator Cruz do this podcast? And I said it's because he likes doing predictions. Like he just this is where he gets to take the jacket off and be like, all right, I get to geek out on this in a great way, and this is my prediction. So it is.
And by the way, if I'm wrong,
okay,
we'll play this segment, and I'll admit it. So if it doesn't happen,
there you go.
I'll be like, all right, look, I don't bat 1,000, Ted Williams and Ty Cobb didn't bat 1,000. If you bat 400, you're doing pretty damn well. And we bat north of 400.
Yeah,
it ain't 1,000, but
just want to be clear, that's Hall of Fame numbers.
Yeah. So, but look, that's part of what makes this, I hope, makes this podcast interesting. Is we could say we don't know what's going to happen, so something will happen, and we'll tell you after it happens. But we don't do that. We actually say, all right, here's my best judgment, and I've done this a little while and know a little bit about it.
Yeah. All right. You go back to the local elections in New York, and you and I have a good friend, Larry Kudlow. We were talking about this. He's there in New York. And I was on his show. We were talking about this election, what this means. And I said, if Mondani's guys win, what this means is it's open season on capitalism and success. It is open season on businesses.
These are the same people that hate Elon Musk and want to confiscate all his wealth.
Right, correct.
That is the heart of the Democrat Party. And every other Democrat is terrified. And by the way, Dan Goldman was about as mainstream a Democrat as you could have. And he is now roadkill because the radical left said that's not enough. By the way, we are also very quickly heading to a world, I believe we're maybe a couple of years away from a world where zero Democrats will accept $1 from AIPAC. And that's a big shift. Look, when I showed up in Congress, AIPAC, which is the American Israeli Political Action Committee, are Americans. Most of them are Jewish. They support a strong America-Israel relationship, and they're assiduously bipartisan, obsessively bipartisan. Many of the leaders of AIPAC. If they're going to
check to Ted Cruz, they're going to check to Chuck Schumer. That's how bipartisan they are.
Right. Many of the leaders of AIPAC, most of the leaders of AIPAC have been Democrats. And we're facing a world where if you look at these incumbents that were beaten, one of the major reasons they were beaten is that they'd been willing to accept funds from Americans. By the way, look, this effort to stigmatize AIPAC, I believe is actually an effort to drive Jews out of public life, to say if you're American and you're Jewish, your contribution to a candidate is unacceptable. And we are really, really close to every single Democrat saying, I don't accept AIPAC funds. And by the way, that puts AIPAC in a position where they are not a Republican organization at all. And yet the Democrat Party
be de facto
is
very quickly.
It is. But by the way, Dan Goldman, I don't know if you watched online. He went in the past couple of days to a coffee shop in New York in his district. He was there with his 7-year-old daughter to a coffee shop. He bought a $9 coffee, because it's New York, that's how much a cup of coffee costs, is $9. And the coffee shop, I think it was like called Poetic or something like that, they saw that he was there afterwards and they said, "You're an Israel-loving, AIPAC-accepting, genocide-supporting nut." And so they refunded him his $9 and said, "We won't take your money." Yeah. So there's so much hate that this lefty woke coffee shop said, "By the way, you bought the coffee and drank it, but we're returning your money because we hate you, we hate Israel, and really what they're saying, we hate Jews so much that your money is not acceptable in our shop." That's where the Democrat Party is right now.
Yeah, and I think this is, I think that what we learned from this election in New York tonight is this. This is going to be a large portion, as you mentioned earlier, of what the presidential Democratic primary is going to look like. There is now a not just space on the main stage.
I'm going to make another
it's
prediction.
It's the center of the stage for communism.
Yes, I'm going to make another prediction. So in a normal world, one of the front runners for the Democrat presidential primary would be Josh Shapiro.
Yeah.
Josh Shapiro is the incumbent governor of Pennsylvania, the largest swing state in America. He is perceived as a relatively moderate, successful, popular governor. Shapiro, in any normal, sane world, would have been Kamala Harris's natural choice as VP.
Yeah.
Because if she wins Pennsylvania, her chances of winning the presidential rise dramatically. Obviously, Shapiro did not get the nod. I believe if Josh Shapiro's name were Josh Smith, he would have been the VP nominee. It would have been Harris Smith. Kamala refused to pick him because he was Jewish. I think in the Democrat Party, being Jewish is now a disqualifier. You are not acceptable. And so another prediction, Josh Shapiro probably runs. By the way, Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, I think he's going to run. In general, someone like an Andy Beshear, if he were the nominee, could be formidable. He's a Bill Clinton type character, elected in a red state, perceived as moderate. I think Shapiro and Beshear have 0.0 chance of being the Democrat nominee because they don't want moderate. They don't want reasonable. They want full on foam coming out of the mouth, Israel hating, America hating Marxist. That's where their party is.
Let's talk about South Carolina. South Carolina, also a very important state. You got involved, not just a little bit, you went all in South Carolina for a couple of different candidates. Explain what happened there, and your endorsements clearly meant something.
Yeah, and let me step back. Let me step back 10 days ago. So 10 days ago, I made a couple of endorsements in two big races, the Georgia gubernatorial race and the South Carolina gubernatorial race. In Georgia, I endorsed Rick Jackson. And in South Carolina, I endorsed Alan Wilson. Now, it so happened, this was not by design, but it happened, that President Trump had endorsed against both of those candidates. Now listen, if you make an endorsement in a Republican primary and the president is on the other side, that is inherently bumpy. That is inherently challenging. In both races, President Trump had made the endorsements really early. In Georgia, he had endorsed the lieutenant governor early before Rick Jackson was even in the race. And so he didn't know that Jackson was running. But he had made those endorsements a while ago. I looked at both races. And I have a philosophy in terms of making endorsements in races, which is I endorse the most conservative candidate who can win. And I'm interested in both. Give me a proven record that you're a real conservative. And show me a path to victory. We're not playing around. We're not playing a game. We're trying to save America. So I want to see how you can win and give me the best evidence that you're going to be a real conservative in office. Rick Jackson, we talked about this on an earlier podcast. An amazing personal story. Grew up in the projects in Atlanta in utter poverty, raised by a single mom who faced serious substance abuse issues. He ran away from home. He ended up in foster care. He had 5 different foster families. He started with every disadvantage, nothing. And he ended up building this amazing business. He's worth several $billions.
It is an incredible story, by the way.
It's an American success story, and he's also been incredibly charitable, in particular taking care of foster kids in Georgia because he came from that environment, doing things like covering their expenses in college. He's also been incredibly generous to Christian ministries. He funds a Christian orphanage in China. I'm told the only orphanage in China that is actually allowed to preach the gospel to the kids.
That's incredible.
And so I looked at him and I said, listen, this guy is going to be a real conservative. He's pledging to abolish the income tax in Georgia. And he is an incredible general election candidate. He's already put $100 million of his own money into the primary, and he's going to put at least that into the general. And so my view was this guy can win the general, but not only that, with Rick Jackson as the nominee in Georgia, I think our chances of winning the Senate seat in Georgia go way, way up. Because if he puts another $100 million into the general, if he's got a huge turnout operation, if he's telling an inspirational story that wins crossover votes in Atlanta, that's how you win not just the gubernatorial race, but the Senate race. So I endorsed him. And I will tell you, after I endorsed him, Donald Trump Jr. endorsed him the day before the election. I was encouraged by that, and I think that was a statement that was done with the blessings of the White House. I went a week ago Monday and campaigned with Rick just outside Atlanta, had a big rally, and Rick ends up winning. Then this week, Alan Wilson, same dynamic. Alan, President Trump early on had endorsed the lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
I don't know the lieutenant governor. I have no issues against her. I've said nothing negative about her. But I've known Alan for more than a decade. He's the sitting attorney general. When he was elected, he was the youngest attorney general in the country. He's been reelected repeatedly. He has a strong conservative record over and over and over again. And so as I look at the two candidates, I think Alan clearly had the stronger conservative record. And so I endorsed him. And by the way, at the time I endorsed him, it was not at all clear what was going to happen. Well, I'm very happy to say that after I endorsed him, shortly thereafter, President Trump came out and endorsed him as well. So he'd endorsed both candidates, and I'm grateful for that. And the reporters all tried to make this into a thing. Well, gosh, aren't you endorsing against Trump? And isn't that like a thing? And I sort of laughed. I said, listen, I've spent a decade as President Trump's strongest ally in the Senate. I'm proud to be so. I think President Trump has been an extraordinary president. And he and I agree on the vast majority of races. The overwhelming majority of races, he and I are on exactly the same side.
Yeah.
It so happens in these two races, I got involved much later than he did. And at the stage in the race where I got involved, I thought there was a clear difference. And I thought Rick and I thought Alan were the two stronger candidates. What ended up happening, look, once I endorsed, President Trump endorsed, and then actually Tim Scott endorsed Alan as well. And he ended up winning by, we're sitting here right now. It is 11:58. Let me look at the numbers as of right now. As of right now, with 99% of the vote in, Alan has 68.6%. And Yvette, his opponent, has 31.4%.
Yeah, that's a beatdown. Just for people that don't know, that's a beatdown in politics.
A 27-point victory. And
yeah,
listen,
that's a beatdown.
I actually think it has some similar dynamics to the Paxton Cornyn race in Texas, where I think Paxton was likely going to win the runoff. All of the numbers I'd seen showed him about 8 to 12 points up. So I think he was likely to win. And then at the end, President Trump endorsed Paxton, and he won by 28 points. And I actually talked to the president, and I said, look, I think your endorsement was worth about 20 points. So, I mean, it had a real impact. It turned what was going to be a victory into a blowout. And I think in South Carolina, the president's endorsement did the same thing. I think Alan was going to win.
Yeah.
And it may have been in that same range. I'm less confident, but my guess is the sort of 8 to 12 point range is where he was. And when the president came in, it again was worth about 20 points and drove it up to 27 points. So that, look, I think that is a good outcome. And I think it's important. You and I care deeply about the elections in November, part of the way we have a good election day is nominating the strongest candidates who have the most conservative record, but also have a path to victory. And I think in both Georgia and South Carolina, that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. I want to get to this other issue, and that's the election database, activist judges, and a shocking ruling that came down. But before we get to that, Senator, I just have to tell you something funny that happened today. So there's a new Air Force One, right?
I do.
You know that, right? Now, here's the thing that matters. You've not been on that Air Force One, correct? I want to make that very okay.
I have not.
So
Has anybody? Is it flying yet?
It's flying. So my kids today,
I didn't realize the new one is in the air.
It's in the air from the report I saw on TV earlier today.
I believe you. I just hadn't seen that.
So it was on TV. The kids look at me and they're like, "Hey, Dad, have you ever been on Air Force One?" I'm like, "I have." And they're like, "Well, have you been on the new one?" I'm like, "No, like it just started. Like that's on the news today. Like you're dealing with 7 and 9." They're like, figuring it out. And I'm like, "No." And they're like, they look at me. They're like, "Well, has Senator Cruz?" I was like, "No, he hasn't either." So actually, I just want to be clear.
It was in the
at
air.
This moment in time, you and I are the same. We've both been on the old Air Force One. Neither of us have been on the new Air Force One. I just want to make that very clear for all the kids out there. We're on the same right now. Okay.
So I want to clarify that, Ben.
That will change soon.
What you are saying is on the tennis court, you and I are the same. That's what I heard.
I just want to throw that bit of humor out there because it felt good today. I was like, no.
I admit, I think you and I are equally matched at tennis. Never mind that you were a Division I varsity tennis player and I can barely hit the ball. But I heard you and I are the same.
So we're going to play the game. When was the first year you were ever on Air Force One? Because I think I'm going to beat you in this one.
Of course you are, because you were on with Bush. I was never on with Bush. You're a big
so there you go.
buck.
So I got the longest tenure of being on an Air Force One. I'm loving this game right now. I'll tell the kids in the morning. I like this.
Now I was on the campaign.
We're not going to say how many times have you been on. Yeah. That would change the scale, obviously.
I was on the campaign plane with Bush in 1999, so I beat you on the campaign plane.
You do. You beat me on that one.
But I never rode on the Air Force One with Bush.
Have you done Marine One?
I have not done Marine One. I have Marine One envy. I really do. I've done the Beast a bunch of times, and the Beast is really cool. But Marine awesome, One, I want to get on Marine One, and I just haven't been on it. Look, first time I went on Air Force One, I mean, listen, during most of Bush's presidency, I was back in Texas. I was the SG of Texas. So you were in the White House while I was back, actually in the heart of America.
Hold on, lightning's about to get. I've got to dodge these bullets coming in here, man. We're going to lose the connection here.
All right. Do you want to hear the even more depressing thing? Do you know the first time I went on Air Force One?
Yeah, I'm ready.
That would be with Barack Obama.
No.
Yeah,
that's a buzzkill.
I got elected to the Senate in 2012, and so Obama was president.
That's right.
And I believe the first time I was on Air Force One was we went back to Dallas. Do you remember when 5 police officers were shot in a horrible mass shooting by this Black Lives Matter radicalists? Yep. And Obama, the White House said, hey, Obama came back to speak at the funeral, and he offered for me to ride on the plane. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I was coming to the funeral, and oddly enough, he seated me next to Nancy Pelosi. And it was the first time I'd met Nancy Pelosi. Like, you actually think, like, these folks in Washington all hang out together. Do you know I've never met AOC? I've never met Ilhan Omar. I've never met Hillary Clinton. I mean,
Count your blessings, by the way, on that one. Count your blessings. I've met 2 of the 3 in green rooms at TV. Count your blessings.
So I will say, like, Pelosi, and I this is the only time I really met her, but she and I were seated next to each other for a 3-hour flight, and she was very pleasant and gracious. To her credit, we were talking, and she's got a child that lives in Houston and grandkids that are in Texas, and we were talking about family. Obviously, we agree on very little substantively, but it was, to her credit, she could be a nice, gracious, civil person, which I didn't know, and it was interesting. Obama, the entire flight, did not come out of his office at all. He came out for 2 minutes at the end of the flight, and he was so aloof. Whereas Trump, and I've been on Air Force One a ton with Trump, hangs out with you for hours, and you just and you can get a lot of work done.
Himself off. Yeah, he does not separate himself off.
And he's going nonstop, and you're going, and I'll typically bring 3 or 4 note cards in my pocket of issues that I want to raise with the president. Because being on Air Force One can be really productive, and you can raise issues and get things done. But the contrast, like Obama was so aloof that he didn't use that time. But I have not been on the new Air Force One. Now, do you know what Trump said the first time I was on Air Force One with him?
What'd he say?
So this was like, I think, March of 2017. So just a couple months into the presidency. And he and I
Did
don't
he say,
remember.
if only I wouldn't have been born, you could have been on this plane and be you as president? That's what that was the line I would have used.
That's
man, just
cold.
Imagine. Yeah,
Yeah,
I would have thrown that
much-
line. If I was Trump, I would have been like, man, just imagine if I wasn't born, this would be your plane right now. That would have been my line.
You're a much meaner guy than Donald Trump. So I'm on the plane with him, and it's like pretty cool. I think it was the second time I'd been on Air Force One, so I'm like geeking out, and I'm looking around, and I said, nice plane, Mr. President. And his immediate response is, he said, yeah, my old one was nicer. And then my response was yeah, but it didn't have missiles, which he laughed at. But I will say I have also been on Trump's personal plane, and he's not wrong. His personal plane is nicer than the old Air Force One. The Qatari one may be nicer than both of them. I assume I'll probably be on it at some point, and so when I get on it, I'll give you a report.
Give me a report. Well, I can't wait to see the new one. Looks amazing. That's why it was a funny topic, because they were like, "Have you been on?" I'm like, "I've not been on that. No, I've not." But when I do, I promised the boys, I said, when I get on there, I will bring you back the M&Ms, because that is a true sign you've been on Air Force One.
Okay, by the way, the M&Ms thing, like members of Congress will kill somebody.
I got it right here. So that's the box. Like
that's the presidential. By the way, the M&Ms have the president's signature on it.
Yeah. So there's the M&M, and then there's his famous signature there.
And by the way, Trump makes very good use of Air Force One. He puts people on, and he like whips votes, and he uses it. One of the things I was grateful was Obama was so damn aloof and arrogant that he didn't actually use Air Force One. He could have accomplished much more damage to America if he would just woo House members or senators.
Yeah.
Look, Democrat
For a guy
senators.
That was a senator, he never used the House and the Senate to his advantage at all when he became president.
He thought he was above everyone. Democrat senators privately, when Obama was president, would bitch nonstop that he wouldn't talk to them. He ignored them. That they were barely people.
Yeah.
And it's to Trump's credit. Look, Trump spends a ton of time. If I call Trump, he either answers or he calls back, usually within the day. And that's true of most senators. That's true of many House members. I mean, he spends hours a day on the phone. I try not to abuse that, by the way. I mean, I end up talking to him probably once a week. But it's funny, my staff is like, oh, you ought to call the president more often. And I'm like, I don't want to bother the guy. Like, when I call
He's
him...
the president of the United States of America, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a lot of demands on his time. So I don't call him just to, like, shoot the breeze and be like, aren't I cool? I call him when there's like a topic that I need a decision, that I need something. But it is his responsiveness is actually phenomenal. And certainly unlike any president I've ever known. And that is one of the keys of his strength. You look at something like the Working Families Tax Cut, also called the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Yeah.
There were tons of House members and senators voting no, and Trump just spent a ton of time, sometimes with honey, sometimes with vinegar, sometimes just being nice and cajoling, and other times just taking a 2x4 to them. But it's how he got the votes, and it's very, very potent. Like one box of M&Ms can get you the vote you need, and Trump has given out a lot of M&Ms.
All right, I want to take a moment. I want to talk to you for just a second, honestly, about how an act of compassion really feels. A few years ago, I made the choice to partner with Compassion International to sponsor a child who was in desperate need. Now, it was a great idea, right? That's what most people say. All right, it's nice, sure. But you really have no idea just how much that simple act can actually change a life. And I'm not just talking about the child. I'm talking about my life. Now, I sponsored Nadia and got to watch her life change right in front of my eyes, going from starving alone on the street to getting the health care and education that she needs to reach her God-given potential. I got to be a part of that change, and the light of that compassion not only illuminated her, it illuminated me. That's the power of compassion, and it's something I'm trying to teach my children about as well. Now, the light of Christ shines on all of us, And you can feel this for yourself and for your children. You can sponsor a child and have them involved. That's what I love so much. So not only are you changing a child's life, you're helping change the world, but you may even be changing yourself and your family. You can sponsor a child today. Visit compassion.com. That's compassion.com. I want to get to this before we run out of time.
Yes.
And that is election database and this activist judge. Explain this judge, what she has done here. In a simplistic way, what they were trying to do is make sure that people that were not American citizens and those that are not eligible to vote would not be eligible to vote. That doesn't seem controversial. The majority of Americans are in favor of the SAVE Act. It's 75-80%, depending on what poll you look at. And this judge said, hey, you guys can't cross-check, and different groups like Social Security can't work with others. And you guys know we're not going to allow this to happen. That was shocking.
Yeah, so I'm going to read from the Associated Press. A federal judge on Monday ruled that a recently revamped version of a federal tool central to the Trump administration's effort to nationalize elections can no longer be used. U.S. District Court Judge Sparkle L. Suknanan. I want you to stop and think. There's a friggin' judge in America named Sparkle L. Suknanan. By the way, she was a clerk for Sonia Sotomayor. She's a radical leftist. I voted against her confirmation. But she is a district judge in Washington, D.C. And Judge Sparkle sided with the advocacy groups that argue that the recent upgrades to the program, called the Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements, or SAVE, aggregated Americans' sensitive personal data in a way that could result in voters being wrongly purged from voter rolls. Quote, all in all, the federal government has knowingly trampled on the privacy rights of American citizens in a manner that threatens the sacred right to vote. Suknanan said in an order explaining the decision. This court cannot stand idly by while that happens. She says Congress had expressly prohibited the government from centralizing Americans' personal identifying information, and the federal agencies that created the SAVE program, quote, knew that the database violates these statutory protections. Now, this is a liberal activist decision. It is also a decision that doesn't make sense under the statute. The statutes that she was looking at. Number one, the statute is the Social Security Act. And the Social Security Act requires, quote, Social Security account numbers of record that are obtained or maintained by persons pursuant to any provision of law shall be confidential, and no authorized person shall disclose any such Social Security account number or related record. Well, you know what? Trump administration didn't disclose anyone's Social Security number. That
exactly.
If they released, your Social Security number, that would be a violation of the Social Security Act. They didn't do that. The Social Security Act doesn't say the federal government can't look at Social Security numbers. Like, the government is one entity, and it is a bizarre system that says you have records that show if people are illegal aliens or not. You, the federal government, are not allowed to look at those records because a law says you can't publicly disclose them to others. They didn't. There's another law called the Privacy Act. And the Privacy Act, they claim, it violated this as well. But again, the Privacy Act does not prohibit the federal government from looking at its own records. I mean, understand, this is a ruling from a radical judge who's saying, even though the federal government, and initially this SAVE database was set up to stop the federal government from giving government benefits, giving welfare to illegal aliens. Now, mind you, it is illegal to give government benefits, to give welfare to illegal aliens. Congress has passed that law over and over and over again. And Democrats, when they're being completely split personality on this, they will say repeatedly, well, we don't give welfare benefits to illegal aliens. They'll say that over and over again. And they'll simultaneously say, dear God, we've got to give welfare benefits to illegal aliens. What a monster would deny them. So they say them both. Remember when every Democrat running for president in 2020 was asked, should we give free health care to every illegal in America? And they all raised their hand. Yep. Every one of them right down the line. But at the end of the day, Congress has passed repeated laws saying do not give welfare benefits to illegal aliens. And Judge Sparkle, and look, by the way, I think it is really impressive that My Little Pony is now a federal judge. But I just wish My Little Pony was not a Marxist. You would think that Judge Sparkle would recognize something beautiful like the Constitution or federal law. It is insane to say that the same Congress that says you cannot give government benefits or welfare to illegal aliens somehow said, but you're not allowed to look to see if anyone's an illegal alien. Nope, the government is blindfolded from looking at your own databases. I'm going to make another prediction in this show.
I was going to say,
this
what's going to happen
decision
now?
Will be reversed.
It will be, and when, and how quickly?
I don't know how quickly. It might be reversed by the D.C. Circuit. If it's not reversed by the D.C. Circuit, I think it will be reversed by the U.S. Supreme Court. What I don't know is if it gets reversed in time for the election. Part of the strategy of the litigants is delay, and generally speaking, these decisions can take a lot of time. Now, the Department of Justice likely will seek emergency relief from the D.C. Circuit. Now, it will depend on what panel of judges you get. You get 3 random judges on the D.C. Circuit. And then if the D.C. Circuit, probably the biggest danger is they seek emergency relief from the D.C. Circuit and they get a bad draw of left-wing judges on the D.C. Circuit. And what I predict they would do then is just try to delay it till after the election. So they just slow walk it. And it's really hard. And that's so that
they can make sure that they don't have any that's implemented for Election Day, so you can have more people that can vote illegally.
Yes. And so if you get a good panel on the D.C. Circuit, I am quite confident this will be reversed. And by the way, if the D.C. Circuit upholds this decision, I think the Supreme Court would take the case and reverse it. But in the normal course of things, that would take a couple of years. So that would not impact the 26 election. It would probably be in time for the 28 election. My hope is they take an emergency appeal and the D.C. Circuit overturns it quickly. Or even if the D.C. Circuit rejects the appeal, I want them to make a decision fast, because then they could appeal that to the Supremes. I think the Supremes would act quickly. The danger is the D.C. Circuit slow walks it for another 6 months.
I tell you what, this has been a fun show. We got predictions. You and I neither of us have been on the the new Air Force One. We've got that factoid out there as well. And we'll replay the predictions if you're wrong, as the senator said. Don't forget, we do the show Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Hit that subscribe or auto download button. You can also watch episodes on YouTube as well. And grab my podcast as well on those off days when we're not on the Ben Ferguson podcast. I'll keep you up to date on the latest breaking news. And the senator and I will see you back here in a couple of days.